And a very good Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock Eastern Time, whatever time zone you happen to be in. Welcome to the show. You're in the Sports Wagering Zone, and we're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcast, Amazon Music Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're on most of the major podcast platforms as well. And of course, we're also on Blackjack TV as well. So welcome to the show. And one other location, we're also on Mile High Radio up there in the Colorado area. So once again, welcome to the show. We appreciate you listening to the show. We really do. We like to keep you up to date as to what's going on as far as betting is concerned. We're not here to tell you who to bet on or how to bet or whatever. Just got to give you some information. That's the whole point of the show. Tell you all about certain factors. We put certain things together, and it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to utilize them or perhaps kind of make it part of whatever system you happen to be using right now. It might help you become a better handicapper. That is the whole point of the show. In other words, we start off by telling you what happened yesterday, kind of give you an idea as to how the dogs, the underdogs, the favorites, how they did in their various situations yesterday in the three major sports going on right now. And of course, we're also going to take a look at two Major League Baseball games coming up this evening, and kind of look and see where the line movement is going. I'm going to let you know where the pros are going on those games. And once again, as always, if you want to use that information or put it in together with whatever you're doing, that's what it's there for. It's for you to use, try to make a better handicapper out of you. We're also going to talk about the NFL futures market as far as the overs and unders for the games, as to how many games each team will win. We're going to go over those today as well. And one more thing, as far as the NBA is concerned, we're going to be talking about some new power rankings that came out today as well. So that's the whole menu for what's going to go on today. And as usual, like I said, we always seem to start it off the same way. We're going to be talking about what happened yesterday in the world of sports. So let's take a few minutes. Let's get into that part of the program right now. So to begin with, over there in the National Hockey League, the favorites and the underdogs, they kind of split it yesterday, 2-2. You had upsets by the Blackhawks. They're a plus 110 on the money line against the Predators, and the Canadiens were a plus 120 on the money line against the Oilers. The overs went 3-1 yesterday, but for the season so far, the unders are still ahead at 51.3% so far this season. Meanwhile, the first period over-unders, and first period over-unders are very similar in betting as if you're betting the first half of a football game or the first 5 innings in a baseball game. Their first period overs and unders. They split yesterday at 2-2. First period unders, they still lead though. They're at 52%. Keep in mind, 52.3, 52.4. That's the area that you want to be in at that point in time. If you're doing that well, you're either breaking even or you're making a little bit of money on it. You pay a little bit, okay? So meanwhile, in the NBA, the favorites, 8-4. Straight up. Did very, very well straight up. But as far as this against the spread went, the dogs were barking loud and clear. Out of those 12 games, you had 8 winners, 3 losers, and 1 was a push. That push was a 116-113 win by the Suns, who were 3-point favorites up against the 76ers. Now, looking at the upsets yesterday, there were 8 of them, okay? You got the Wizards, 2-point dogs against the Warriors. The Cavaliers, 2-point dogs against the Bulls. The next 1.5 against the Hawks. And the Clippers, a 4.5-point dog against the Grizzlies. Now, the Jazz and the Raptors and the Heat were the only favorites to cover. The under, they were at +9 against the Pacers and the Pistons, who are 10.5 against the Mavericks. The Blazers are 1.5-point dogs against the Nuggets, and the T-Wolves 3.5-point dogs against the Kings. They all lost their games, but more importantly, as far as what we're concerned about, is they covered the loss, okay? They covered on the line. So far, the favorites lead has been cut. It's down to 430 to 425. That's at 50.3% on the season. The over-under split yesterday, 6-6, and the overs still lead at 50.5%. Meanwhile, over there in baseball, the underdogs, loud and clear once again, too. 8-5 straight up, with the Rays and the Royals closing their consensus pick'em as the Brewers were a plus 170 against the Padres. That was the biggest upset, with the other upsets being by the Rangers at plus 158, the Blue Jays at plus 113, the D-backs at plus 155, the Cubs at plus 113, the Rockies at plus 129, the Braves at plus 130, and the Pirates at plus 113 in game one. All those numbers on the money line. Now the Dogs reclaimed the lead as far as baseball is concerned, 127 to 126 straight up. You had 11 games closing as a pick'em, and the over-unders yesterday split 7-7 for the season. The unders still are ahead at 53.9, which is almost at 54% in that situation. So that's the story as to what happened yesterday as far as the numbers are concerned. We keep a record of it, keep it going, let you know what's going on, so you'll get a better feel for what's going on within the sport itself. You notice the National Hockey League, favorites have been killing them. I mean, all season long, they've been absolutely phenomenal. As far as basketball is concerned, well, again, we talked about this yesterday, try to say, until the season comes to an end, in other words, once they start into the playoffs, it may not be a bad idea to kind of lay off the NBA for a while, primarily because you don't know who's going to be playing sometimes. You may be doing a ton of homework on a particular game, and you're going in this one direction, and that's where you're going to go. You get in touch with your sports book, you lay your money on that particular game, and then a couple hours later, you're listening to sports radio, and one of the key players on that team you like is not going to be playing. So now you're stuck with that number. So we talked yesterday about what we call, not what we call, but what Josh Applebaum from VSIN calls the 6 o'clock rule. Don't make your bet. If you're going to bet the NBA, wait until about 6 o'clock. By then, most of the things are in. Most of the guys who are not going to play have already been announced. Yeah, there's always a possibility somebody not, backing out minutes or two before the game starts, but at least you have a pretty good idea as to who is not going to play and who's going to play, and that's when you should be making your bet. So kind of think about it in that perspective. Meanwhile, in baseball, we got two games we're going to look at today when we come back from our break. We got the New York Mets against the Chicago Cubs and the Los Angeles Angels against the Houston Astros. We're going to take a look at the line movement on those two particular games, and we're going to see in which direction the pros are going, let you know that information, and then you deal with it as you see fit. So let's take that first break, and just a reminder, in case you're brand new to the show, just let you know we take 3 breaks within the show. Each one is of about a minute duration. So if that's the case, we'll be back in 60 seconds. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Welcome to the show. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network on Blackjack TV across the country as well. And of course, we're podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, just to name a few. I don't want to go into all of them. I want to spend half the show talking about the podcast platforms that we happen to be on. So right now, let's take a look at two baseball games that are coming up tonight at 7 p.m. and 8 o'clock. And of course, it has to do with watching the money line, watching the line movement, and seeing in which direction the pros are going. Now, this is a method that we've been employing since the beginning of the season. It's an unemotional game. It's an unemotional way of picking teams. If you let your emotions get into you, you're not going to do very well as far as betting is concerned. Yeah, you're going to win some games, no doubt about it. You might be a diehard Yankee fan, so yeah, you're going to bet the Yankees now, and you're going to win sometimes, and maybe even most of the time. But over the long haul, you do much better if you weren't as emotional, if you kind of looked at everything from an objective standpoint. Look at the numbers. What do the numbers tell you? Because the numbers don't lie. So far this season, with this little method, system, whatever you want to call it, what we've been doing with it is so far we've had 53 plays throughout the season. Out of those 53 plays, 28 were winners, 25 were losers. So we come up with a percentage of 52.8%. So that either makes you even or gives you a couple of dollars, okay? So if you had been following this method of selecting your team and playing it that way, you'd be either breaking even or making a little bit, but at least you more than likely will not be losing. You'll be at 52.8%, just a little above 52.3, 52.4. So today we have two games on tap. We have the Mets against the Cubs, and we have the Angels against the Astros. These are the way they look as far as line movement is concerned, and of course, which direction the pros are going. So somewhere around 7:30, 7:40, that's Eastern time, of course. Mets, who are 7-6, once again playing the Chicago Cubs, who are 8-9. Now, the Cubs have upset the Mets in both games so far this series. So far in Chicago, they won 3-1 and then 16-4. In that game, they were plus 115 dogs in both of those games. Now, tonight, however, Chicago goes for the sweep. They go for that third win. The Mets are going to start Joey Lucchesi. He's 0-1 this season with a 5.4 ERA. The Cubs, they come back with their righty, Trevor Williams. He's 2-1 this season with a 5.02 ERA. Now, as we look at the line today, it opened with the New York Mets listed as a minus 130 road favorite. Now, the pros seem to be saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't play with it, okay? We've seen the Mets drop 3 games, and we also now have seen the numbers drop from being a minus 130 down to minus 125. Now, that was caused because the pro money is backing the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs went from being a plus 120 down to being a plus 115 on the money line. Now, they have now won 3 of their last 4 games after having that 5-8 start before, when they started the season at 5-8. But since then, they've really been doing a good job. The Cubs have value in this game. They're a dog coming off a win. They're a sweet spot dog at plus 140 or less. And they're a home dog who made the playoffs the season before. These are different metric criteria that we look at, and this is why we're saying bet the Cubs. The Cubs are a perfect 4-0 against left-handed starting pitchers this season. That's another plus. The Cubs are also 6-5 at home, while the Mets are 3-5 while they're on the road. So we could also be looking at a higher scoring game in this game as well. They got the total set at 9 with a heavy minus 120 juice going to the over. So both pitchers, they both have high ERAs, and the wind in Chicago, the Windy City, expected to blow out to dead center field at 10 miles per hour. So that's why you're seeing that total number of 9 runs being scored. So more than likely, most of the attention is going to be on the over 9 because of the wind conditions in Chicago. And if you've ever been in Chicago, and especially if you've ever been in Wrigley Field, you'll see what I mean. When that wind is blowing out, those balls are flying out like crazy. Balls that would have been just fly balls, maybe caught at the track, at the warning track, they get into the first or second row as home runs. So look for it in that direction. So the Cubs, that's the team the pros are looking to bet on in this game tonight. Meanwhile, over around 8 o'clock or so, the Los Angeles Angels and the Houston Astros. The Angels are 9-7 this season. Astros are 7-10. Now, this is the first game of a 4-game series between a pair of teams in the American League West that are really struggling. They've been really going at it. The Angels just dropped 2 of their 3 games at home to the Dodgers, while the Astros, they just lost a couple of games on the road at Colorado. Houston is now 1-9 over their last 10 games. 1-9 over their last 10 games. Tonight, the Angels come out with their veteran, Alex Cobb. He's 1-0 this season with a 4.63 ERA. The Astros coming in with righty Christian Javier, 1-0 with a 2.08 ERA. Now, as we look at the line for this game, it opened with Houston as a minus 120 home favorite. Now, right off the bat, this opening line kind of says something. The Astros are mired. I mean, they're stuck in a prolonged losing streak, and the Angels have a winning record. And yet, Houston opened as the favorite. Okay, that's the strange thing about it. The public is all over Mike Trout and the Angels getting the plus money. Yet we've actually seen the line move further to the Astros, going from minus 120 to minus 125. So what does this mean? Basically, it's what we call fade the trendy dog, and it's on Houston. The pros are buying low on the Houston Astros at home because they are the contrarian favorite. Contrarian favorite. Fade the trendy dog. The trendy dog in this particular situation are the Los Angeles Angels. So saying fade them. By fade, we say stay away from, push them away, fade them away. So the pros are looking at Houston in this particular game. The total in this game is 9 also. Both these teams have been very profitable to the over this season. Both teams, the Astros and the Angels, are 9-7 to the over so far this year. So those are the 2 games we're talking about on tap as far as the pros go, as far as the line movement is concerned. In the first game, the Mets against the Cubs, the pros are on the Cubs, and Los Angeles Angels against the Houston Astros. The pros in this particular game are on the Houston Astros as well. So that's the story for tonight. Once again, it's information, it's data, it's stuff that's coming at you, stuff's coming at you from all different directions. Utilize some of it. Some of it may not mean anything to you. If you can incorporate it into whatever system you're using, that would be a good thing to do as well. But either way, these are the 2 choices for tonight as far as the pros are concerned and as far as the line movement seems to indicate. So let's take another break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at the NFL, take a look at the over-unders as far as game totals are concerned. Let's see where they're at, so that if you're interested in betting in futures and betting on the over-unders as far as games are concerned, this might be of some help to you as well. So let's take that break, and we'll be back right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the Sports Wagering Zone, coming to you live right here in Charlotte, North Carolina on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, Blackjack TV, and also on most of your major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or iHeartRadio, just to name a few. So we went over a couple of games for tonight. In case you just missed it, we're looking at as far as the pros are concerned and which direction they're going. In the Mets-Cubs game, they like the Cubs. And in the Angels-Astros game, they like the Astros. So that's it for baseball for today. Meanwhile, let's look at the NFL. They're always in the news. Every day there's something going on that we can talk about as far as the NFL is concerned. Of course, we're about a week away from, not only about a week, but we are a week away from the draft. But so let's take a look at where the over-unders are standing right now as far as games for next season. It's not usually going to be a big change as far as who is drafted, but there may be some change. You never know. Depends on some quarterback moves that may happen that may affect the number on these totals as well. So the 2021 NFL regular season, we know it's just not long to be coming around sometime in September, but there's always something to bet on. Like we say, the over-unders for every team have been released. They're out there. The various different sports books are starting to show them. And according to DraftKings, the Kansas City Chiefs, they have the highest total with 12, while the Houston Texans are at the lowest number, which is 4.5. So quickly, here are the teams and what their over-under possibilities and their numbers are. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are at 11.5, and it's a minus 125 on the over. And if you take the under, it's plus 103. The Ravens are at 11. To bet them, it's going to cost you $125. If you go for the under, it's plus 103. At 10.5, you got the Buffalo Bills. Their over is at minus 118. Their under is at minus 104. It's kind of on both sides on the minus side. The Green Bay Packers are also at 10.5. The 49ers are at 10.5 as well as the Los Angeles Rams. The Packers, Rams, 49ers all at 10.5 or lower, over or under. At 10, we have the Indianapolis Colts. The over for them is at plus 110. If you want to go to the under, it's going to cost you some money. It's at minus 134 on the money line. At 9.5, we have a few teams lined up here. The Cleveland Browns, the Dallas Cowboys, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Tennessee Titans. All these teams are set at 9.5. If you like the Browns over 9.5, it's going to cost you $159. If you go for the under, it's going to be a plus 130. With the Cowboys, their over is at plus 110. Their under is at minus 134. With the Seahawks, their over is minus 134. Their under is at plus 110. And finally, the Tennessee Titans, their over is at plus 123. Their under is at minus 150. At 9, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. Their over is minus 107. And their under is minus 114. So they're kind of right in between both. The Miami Dolphins are at 9. Their over is at minus 121. If you go to the under the 9, it's at plus 100. The New England Patriots are at 9 also. Their over is minus 143. Their under is at plus 118. And finally at 9, you've got the New Orleans Saints. Their over is minus 110. Their under is minus 110. So there again, it's a very tight number right in there. Minnesota Vikings at 8.5 on the over-under. Their over is at minus 143. The under is at plus 118. Pittsburgh Steelers are also at 8.5. Their over is at minus 121. Their under is at plus 100. Meanwhile, at 8, you have two teams. the Arizona Cardinals, and the Washington football team. The Cardinals are minus 110 to the over, minus 110 to the unders. Close number. Washington football team, their over is minus 134. Their under is a plus 110. At 7.5, you got a few teams. You have the Denver Broncos, and their over is plus 100. Their under is minus 121. The Raiders from Las Vegas, their over and under are both at minus 110. And finally, the Carolina Panthers, their over is 106 on the minus side. Under is also minus 115. Meanwhile, at 7, you've got the New York Giants, whose over 110, and their under is minus 110 as well. The Falcons are also at 7. Their over is minus 143. Their under is a plus 118. And you also have the Chicago Bears at 7. And their over and under both at minus 110. At 6.5, you have the Cincinnati Bengals. Their over-under is also minus 110. The New York Jets are at 6.5. Their over is at plus 123. Their under is minus 150. Also, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're also at 6.5. Their over is minus 134 to go under plus 110. And finally, the Jaguars, a minus 121 on the under, a plus 100 on the over. At 5, you have the Detroit Lions. Their over is plus 100. Their under is minus 121. And like we said before, the Houston Texans, they bring up the rear. Their over and under, both together, either one you go on, is at minus 110. So that's a rundown of the over-unders as far as the futures are concerned. The one thing you got to be concerned about with the futures is this. Once you lay that money down, it's gone for the entire season. Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to get anything a month from now or 2 weeks from now, a week from now. Everything doesn't take effect until the season is over, and the amount of games won or lost are then determined at that point in time. So that's one of the negative aspects of betting on futures markets. The positive aspect of it is that if you happen to hit on the right one, and I'm not talking about with Kansas City or one of those higher numbers, you hit some of those numbers around 8.5, okay, in that area somewhere, or 9, and then you pick that team, you kind of feel good about something like that. I mean, you've done something that maybe someone else hasn't done. Meanwhile, everyone's going to be on Kansas City. Everyone's going to be on Tampa Bay. That's for sure. So that's the story as far as the over-unders are concerned in the NFL for game totals. We're going to take our final break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look over at the NBA and see how the power rankings are doing. The latest ones have just come out. We'll cover them as well. So just a reminder, you're in the sports wagering zone. You'll be back in 1 minute. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone, coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Now let's talk about the NBA. The season is about ready to come to an end in a few weeks. Got a few games left, but some of the teams, they just refuse to start buckling down. They're not trying to do as well as they should be doing. The Nets, they've experienced one of the biggest drops of the week. They were the Eastern Conference favorites, and they dropped outside of the top 5. Now, at some point, these guys have to play together, or they're going to be in danger of becoming this year's version of the Clippers. So let's take a look at this week's power rankings. Number 1, and they were number 1 last week, were the Phoenix Suns. So far this week, they're 2-1 straight up. They're 2-1 against the spread. Now, the Suns fell asleep at the wheel in that home game against the Spurs, but they kind of redeemed themselves with that 128-127 victory over the Bucks in overtime. They posted a minus 4.8 net rating and gave up 1.154 points per possession to their 3 opponents. The Phoenix probably has nothing to worry about defensively, but it's hard to keep up this sort of intensity for the rest of the season. But they're in number 1. At number 2, moving up from number 3, the Utah Jazz. Utah's lone loss came with that shorthanded roster against the Lakers over the weekend. The Jazz are just maintaining their course throughout the dregs of the final month of the season. They outscored their 3 opponents, and also, they posted great offensive ratings. They lost Donovan Mitchell to an ankle injury, but it seems like he'll probably be ready for the postseason. So in number 2, you have the Utah Jazz. At number 3, moving up from number 4, Philadelphia 76ers. There's no shame if you lose to the Warriors when Stephen Curry was hot as he was over the past 11 games. The 76ers, they scored just 2 great wins over the Nets and the Clippers, but they posted that slightly negative net rating despite their success. Their offense is in good condition, but they've been shorthanded throughout this entire past week. Meanwhile, at number 4, moving up from number 5, you have the Los Angeles Clippers. They've been on an insane run in the second half, and they kept it up even though Kawhi Leonard has been missing 2 of their last 3 games. Both of them, they were not able to cover. He wasn't there. Still, they allowed points per possession at .105, and their opponents came out with net ratings as well. More and more, the Clippers are looking like the team to beat out there at that Western Conference, moving up to number 4 from number 5. At number 5, you have the Denver Nuggets, who moved up from number 6. They put a cap on their undefeated weekend with a comeback victory over the Grizzlies in double overtime. Their first week without Jamal Murray could not have gone better. So far, questions still remain about how competitive this team can be in the postseason if Murray doesn't play. But until then, the Nuggets deserve a spot in the top 5. Like we said, the big drop into number 6 from number 2, the Brooklyn Nets. Injuries. They just continue to be a problem. And now we should start to really question as to whether they can overcome the situation when the postseason starts. The Nets lost a one-sided affair to the Sixers, and then they fell to the Heat. Kevin Durant suffered a thigh contusion. That's going to cause him to miss more time. Nick Claxton is in the health and safety protocol section. The Nets are the best team in the Eastern Conference. That's only when they had their team together. But the question right now is, will they ever be together? At number 7 last week, you have the Bucks. At number 8, moving up from number 10, are the Boston Celtics. And at number 9, moving up from number 11, are the New York Knicks. Now, the Knicks, wow, if you've been following them over the past 10, 12 years, they have been absolutely incredible lately. They're 4-0 against the spread, and their run is part of a larger 10-0 against the spread. And that's a surge that was extended Tuesday night against the Hornets that they played. Their defense still been fantastic. Their offense has really taken a big step forward. Take a look at the Knicks. because they are a good contender in that Eastern Division, especially with the Nets going down like they have been lately. So that's the story as far as the power rankings are concerned on the NBA. And like we said yesterday, one of the things you have to think about is this. It's only 2 weeks left, maybe 10 games. Stay away from it. Leave it alone because right now you're not sure who's going to be starting. A team that's a contender to into the playoffs and they know they're in the playoffs, they may possibly rest their best guys. They don't want them to get hurt. You just want to make sure that you find out about that early enough before you make your bet. That's why, once again, like Josh Applebaum says, you have that 6 o'clock rule. Wait, if you're going to have to bet the NBA, you're looking for action. You want to do something. You don't want to bet baseball. You don't want to bet hockey. You love the NBA and you want to bet the NBA. Hold off until 6 o'clock. See what happens. See who and who is not going to play. That'll go a long way to helping you in making a profit during these next 2 weeks that are coming up. Anything is liable to happen. Now, once the playoffs begin, it's going to be a different story because, then it's all hands on deck. Everyone's going to be playing. You don't have to worry about that. The only thing that'll stop someone from playing is a possible injury or, again, coming up positive on their COVID test before game time. So those are the things that can happen. That's why it's been such a crazy season. That's why it's been so difficult to try to come out ahead as you've been betting NBA games this entire season. So if you can, hold off for a couple of more weeks, dabble maybe a little baseball, maybe play a little hockey if you want, play one of those games if you're really looking for something to do. Otherwise, kind of stay away from basketball. Or if you're going to play on basketball, just put a token bet down, just something that kind of keeps you going, gives you some action, gives you something to do, okay? But in the meantime, like I said, the best thing to do, and what we recommend here, kind of stay away from it for a few days, and then you'll be much better off, I'm sure. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Just again, to recap the 2 games on tap for tonight as far as baseball is concerned. Here's 2 games you could take a look at if you don't want to bet any NBA games. The pros like the Cubs over the Mets, and they like the Astros over the Angels as well. So once again, thanks for listening. Loved having you listening. We appreciate the fact that you do listen to the show. So until tomorrow, Friday, back again at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We're here every Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturdays and Sundays, we're here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So until tomorrow, have a very pleasant Thursday. If you're going to be betting tonight, I hope you do very, very well. So I hope that you not only have a pleasant Thursday, but you have a profitable Thursday as well. So until tomorrow at 4 p.m., right here from Charlotte, live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, have a very, very good Thursday, and we'll talk again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Goodbye, everybody.